the weather started getting rough.
It's one of the 4 boats used in the Gilligan's Island series that aired in the 1960s.
You've probably seen Gilligan's Island 100 times, but what if some of its most surprising moments were hiding in plain sight? This photo looks normal at first, but the longer you stare, the more something feels off. And once you catch it, you can't unsee it. From a strange boat detail that doesn't match, to a quick blink that wasn't supposed to happen, these slip-ups tell a different story. So look closer, because one tiny detail in this image changes everything. The crowded island secret. The island is meant to be completely empty, a place where the castaways are alone with no one else in sight. That idea is what makes the story work. 7 people, cut off from the world, trying to survive with what they have. But as the episodes continue, something starts to feel off. Again and again, new people suddenly appear on the island, each with their own story of being stranded for years. Visitors to the location include Wrongway Feldman, Duboff the painter, and a jungle boy who also comes to see the site. The visitors share a common belief, which leads them to think they are the sole inhabitants of the location. The islanders had spent extended time periods on the island, which lasted for several years, but they never encountered other people during that time. The situation reaches a point that establishes a limit for what can be understood. The people who lived on the island managed to live separately from one another because they shared the same island. The situation becomes increasingly bizarre with every moment of contemplation. The island space appears larger than its visible area because there seem to be secret locations that nobody has yet discovered. The system creates an effect that allows people to exist beyond detection while they constantly miss each other. The show dedicated most of its storytelling time to specific narrative elements, which resulted in it devaluing logical content. The small element creates a twofold effect because it alters the island's appearance. The space first appears vacant, but people begin to occupy the area through their silent movements. The space functions as a zone where people who have missed their possibilities reside together without knowing about each other's presence. The complete concept of solitude on the island becomes different after you discover that particular thing. Keep your eyes sharp, because the next one happens in a split second. Caught in a blink. In the episode Man with a Net, the castaways come across a strange visitor who arrives on the island with a very specific goal. He's searching for a rare butterfly. At first, his presence feels unusual but harmless. However, things quickly take a turn when his exit becomes chaotic. In one sudden moment, all 7 castaways are knocked unconscious and left lying on the ground. The scene is meant to show them completely still, fully out, with no movement at all. It's a quick setup, but it creates tension about what might happen next. All aspects of the present time period exist to create a believable appearance. The characters lie motionless on the ground, demonstrating no ability to react or move their bodies, as they remain completely immobilized. A tiny element in the scene functions as a spoiler because it conflicts with the established appearance. The actress Natalie Schafer, who plays Mrs. Howell, remains in motion during her entire performance. For just a split second, she opens her eyes before quickly closing them again. The action represents a minimal movement, which becomes difficult to observe. But once you recognize it, you will find it impossible to disregard. The scene remains intact despite this short error, which reveals critical information. The task of maintaining complete stillness for even a brief film shot proves to be more challenging than it appears. During the filming process, actors need to maintain their designated position while managing their breathing patterns and maintaining their concentration from the moment the cameras start to record. The filming process allows an unnoticeable movement to occur without detection. The situation demonstrates to you that real individuals work behind the scenes to maintain their character roles. The action lasts only a brief moment, but it reveals the authentic nature of the performance through its silent demonstration. A boat that morphs. The opening of Gilligan's Island feels simple and familiar. 7 people board a boat for what should have been a short, easy trip. The SS Minnow sets off, the theme song plays, and everything seems perfectly in place. It's a clean setup that introduces the story in a way that feels natural and easy to follow. But if you slow things down and really pay attention, something doesn't quite match up. The boat shown at the beginning doesn't fully line up with what appears later during the storm or after the crash. The differences between structures become apparent when you examine their details with close inspection. The boat, in some shots, lacks its upper deck, which should exist above its windows where the captain operates his steering station. The front section of the cabin possesses a flat appearance that lacks any pointed features. The features in subsequent scenes make their appearance while changing their existing forms. The minnow changes its appearance between scenes without any visible method of transformation. People first miss these alterations, yet they become impossible to overlook once they are identified. The detail becomes interesting because it contains a hidden element that people tend to miss. The audience tends to pay attention to the characters and plot development instead of watching how the boat was constructed. The shot mismatch shows how different scenes were filmed, but they failed to achieve proper alignment with each other. The show remains unblemished because the element enhances its overall appeal. The small production errors demonstrate how behind-the-scenes activities operated, which allowed work to continue when details failed to match precisely. Island Illusion Moment. In the first season of Gilligan's Island, the stranded boat becomes one of the most recognizable parts of the show. During the opening credits, the minnow is shown resting on the beach, tilted to one side after surviving the storm. It looks damaged and stuck, as if it barely made it to shore. That image helps set the tone, making it feel like the castaways are truly trapped with no easy way out. The episode concludes with an unusual occurrence that begins to unfold. The boat appears different at that moment, which begins when the credits start to play. The object stands straight because it has achieved a state of self-correction. The same location contains the same wreck, yet the boat's position shows different from what viewers first encountered. The change happens quickly, and it's easy to miss unless you're really paying attention. The moment creates an experience that feels magical, although it was not intended to create that effect. The small continuity slip occurred during editing because different shots had incomplete matching requirements. The experience remains intact because it remains unchanged. The experience creates a new experience, which draws people to discover what happens next. The viewers receive extra content to observe, which transforms a basic background element into a special character. The scene transforms because you see it from a different perspective, which shows how the show developed through its production process. Submarine slip-up. In one episode, Gilligan comes up with what seems like a bold plan to get help. He finds a small Japanese submarine and decides to use it to escape the island. On paper, it sounds like a smart move. Finally, a real chance to reach the outside world. But, as usual, things don't go as planned. As he climbs into the submarine, he forgets one small but important detail. He leaves the top hatch open. That one mistake quickly turns the entire moment from serious to something completely different. The submarine first leaves the water's surface when Gilligan begins his mission from inside the submarine. The sequence unexpectedly shows what happens next. His legs and feet are clearly visible outside, splashing around as the sub moves. The entire scene becomes broken. He appears to be stuck partly inside because he is fighting to escape from his current position. The first part of the sentence establishes a clear connection to the second part of the sentence. The phenomenon becomes permanent after you first identify it. The moment becomes special because it demonstrates his character through his actions. The clumsiness of Gilligan and his tendency to create accidents made his mistake feel like a natural occurrence. The scene maintains its effectiveness because the mistake creates additional comedic value. The production process demonstrates how recording required multiple attempts and how filmmakers missed several minor elements. The show used these moments to demonstrate that fun was more important than achieving perfect results. The visual elements of the scene failed to match the intended appearance, yet still created effective results that improved the overall scene. Hidden tank exposed. In the same episode where Gilligan attempts his submarine escape, another small detail slips into view, one that wasn't meant to be seen at all. After finally closing the hatch, he takes the submarine out into the lagoon, hoping for a smooth and successful ride. This moment is supposed to show progress, like he's finally doing something right for once. But just as the scene starts to feel steady, something unusual appears. The periscope scans the ocean surface when a scuba tank appears directly next to it. The object moves through space as if it belongs there, because it creates visible contact with the ongoing events. The object does not belong to the submarine, and it does not belong to the narrative. The object achieves visibility through the shot, which transforms a serious moment into an unintentional comedic scene. When you first see the object, it becomes impossible to concentrate on anything other than that object. The detail provides scientists with an uncommon opportunity to observe how the scene was filmed. The tank may have been used by someone helping guide or control the submarine underwater. The complete reason for its presence was not successfully concealed. The single moment remains unchanged. The situation creates additional captivating elements. The show continued its progress even when the team faced difficulties. The viewers who discover this element will find it to be another concealed aspect that enhances their experience of the scene. The endless supplies mystery. The castaways were only meant to be on a simple 3-hour tour. That's the whole setup, just a short trip that turned into something much bigger. So you would expect them to have very little with them. Maybe a few personal items, basic supplies, and not much else. But as the show goes on, something starts to feel off. They seem to have far more than anyone would reasonably bring on such a short journey. Mary Ann and Ginger show different clothing choices throughout the episodes because they seem to have packed entire wardrobes instead of bringing just one outfit. The professor possesses extensive knowledge about books and tools, which enables him to create whatever he requires. The Howells traveled with expensive possessions that did not correspond to their plan for a fast boat journey. The situation becomes increasingly unrealistic because the details continue to accumulate through your analysis of the situation. The group appears equipped to handle any challenge that comes their way. The situation creates an unusual situation where people experience both isolation and emergency readiness. The narrative remains intact until you reach a point where you must examine its logical connections. The show has its own unique beauty because of this particular aspect. The story development required the details to maintain a balance between reality and creative storytelling. Mystery Man. The opening scene sets up what should be a simple and clear trip. The minnow leaves the harbor, and the theme song introduces the group of passengers. Everything feels easy to follow. The familiar faces are all there. Gilligan, the skipper, the Howells, the professor, Ginger, and Marianne. Each of them is shown in their usual spots, making it clear who is part of the journey. At first glance, nothing seems out of place. The main group has a man who operates the boat while he leads them through their journey. The character appears without an introduction, and his name remains unknown while he stays outside the group of castaways. He performs his work duties in a silent manner. He disappears after the storm strikes, and the group becomes stranded. The situation has no explanation, and there is no mention or follow-up. He appears to have vanished from existence without a trace. The show presents a small mystery, which it chooses not to resolve. What happened to him? The background detail appeared to be unplanned, but he appeared to be meant to exist there. The beginning of the journey raises questions because of the existing situation. The story displays everything that occurred when the main character observes the situation. The observer needs to pay attention to the character because he knows that he will vanish from the scene. That missing piece is strange, but the next one breaks the rules completely. Signals that don't add up. Throughout the show, the castaways occasionally manage to pick up radio broadcasts, giving them a small but important connection to the outside world. These moments feel hopeful. The group gathers around, listening carefully, waiting for any sign that rescue might be possible. The voices come through clearly enough, and at first, everything sounds normal. It feels like they're finally getting a break, like help might be within reach. The radio stations that they listen to operate under call signs that always begin with the letter W. The situation appears small, but it brings an actual, specific meaning. The United States radio stations use the letter W to identify stations that operate their signals from locations that exist east of the Mississippi River. The distance between the actual location of the castaways and their designated position measures thousands of miles. The group needs to be located on an uninhabited island that exists in the South Pacific Ocean because this area belongs to the United States. Under the best conditions, an AM radio can only receive signals from nearby stations. The distance between the 2 points exceeds everything. The audio content that they receive creates a complete mismatch with their expected location. Most viewers will miss this small detail because they need to see it clearly through focused observation. The scenes transform after you notice this specific detail. The radio system should create a natural connection to external signals, but it serves as an additional warning that the show contains various elements that do not match up correctly. Not really a steamship. The boat at the center of the story is known as the SS Minnow, a name that sounds official and believable. Most viewers accept it without question. The letters SS suggest that the boat runs on steam power, which was common for certain vessels. It fits the tone of the show, and no one really stops to think about it. But if you take a closer look, the name doesn't actually match the boat itself. The Minnow doesn't operate as a steam-powered ship. The vessel functions as a motor ship that uses either diesel or gas power for its operations. The standard designation for such vessels requires them to be identified as M55 instead of SS. The boat is described through this minor technicality, which affects its entire description. The name doesn't match the visual content that we currently observe on display. The Minnow is believed to be a 1964 wheeler boat that reaches its maximum speed of 12 knots. The speed of the vehicle remains below acceptable standards. The boat could only travel 40 miles maximum because the trip time was limited to 3 hours. The distance remains short because they need to travel from their current position at sea toward the nearest land point. The situation creates a secretive situation that remains unknown to others. How far did they actually need to travel until they reached safety? The events happened closer to shore than people assumed at first. The story maintains its integrity because the extra element creates a new dimension that requires deeper analysis of the entire situation. Gilligan's Secret Ring. In the episode They're Off and Running, there's a light and easy moment where Gilligan and the skipper take part in a turtle race. The scene is simple, playful, and focused on their usual back and forth. It's the kind of moment that fits perfectly with the tone of the show. Nothing feels out of place at first, and everything seems to move along just as expected. The character exhibits a small detail that requires close examination for proper identification. The wedding ring that Gilligan wears becomes visible when he moves throughout the space. The object exists in an obvious location that people can easily find. The object becomes visible after people detect its presence. The narrative fails to show Gilligan as a married character. The story lacks any reference to it, and it does not match his character arc. The most likely explanation is simple. The ring probably belongs to the actor Bob Denver, who may have forgotten to remove it before filming the scene. The situation results from a mistake that happens often when production work reaches its peak. The team allowed small details to remain unaddressed because they failed to notice them during their work process. The moment maintains its value despite the obvious mismatch. The scene provides a hidden element that viewers can discover only through their observation. The setting demonstrates how people serving in an organized environment can overlook basic things, which leads to essential information that only attentive audiences will discover. Not too far from home. In the episode The Friendly Physician, the castaways are given what feels like a real chance to escape the island. They set out on a small boat, hoping to finally make their way back home. It's a rare moment where things seem to be going in the right direction. The mood shifts slightly, with a sense of hope building as they move across the water. The entire scene demonstrates their distance from civilization because they remain enclosed between ocean and jungle territory. The background contains an unexpected element, which you can discover by examining it closely. The lagoon's tree line creates a barrier that hides distant objects from view. The objects create an artificial appearance that looks like architectural structures. The shapes appear faint, yet they become visible after you discover them. The environment of the remote island setting contains elements that do not fit with its natural appearance. The elements that exist in this area can either belong to a nearby studio space or appear as part of a distant cityscape. The two elements disrupt the complete unification, which shows how castaway characters remain unaware of their surroundings. The scene contains a small element that creates a whole new atmosphere. The story shifts from showing a remote location to presenting a situation where they could be closer to land than anyone realized. The story maintains its effectiveness, but its presence requires your attention for critical thinking. The concept of total isolation loses its previous strength after you observe it. The lyrics don't match. The theme song describes the castaways as landing on a desert island, which gives the idea of a dry, empty place with little life. But once you actually see the island, that description doesn't seem to fit. The surroundings are full of thick greenery, tall trees, and rich plant life. Instead of a barren setting, it looks more like a tropical jungle filled with resources. The second detail presents a problem because it appears to be incorrect. Gilligan is described as a mighty sailing man, which means he possesses both sailing expertise and practical sailing knowledge. Throughout the entire show, he demonstrates difficulty with performing even basic activities. His actions rarely match that strong description, making the line feel more like a stretch than a true reflection of who he is. The explanation requires no more than a basic approach to comprehension. The term desert island refers to two different meanings because it describes both uninhabited islands and dry land areas. The setting of the story matches its real meaning, although it fails to represent what people typically visualize. The song contains the Gilligan line, which exists as a part of its musical playful character. The show contains small mismatches that become noticeable after viewers start watching with focused attention. The allergy that vanished. In one episode, it's clearly stated that Mrs. Howell is allergic to cats. The idea is simple. Being near a cat should cause a reaction, whether it's sneezing, discomfort, or some visible sign that something is wrong. This detail helps define her character and adds a small layer to how she interacts with her surroundings on the island. The moment a cat shows up in the vicinity, nothing occurs. The audience does not react because they display no signs of irritation, show complete indifference, and make no remarks about the situation. The viewers who saw the previous information about the show now find this moment strange. The situation requires confirmation of her allergy through observation of her response after even short contact with others. The situation contains one minor element that provides an explanation for what occurs. The cat stays away from Mrs. Howell, who never enters the space where they could interact. She only has a short time with the material, which probably does not give her enough time to show any reactions. The initial appearance of the situation as an error becomes understandable through the analysis that shows insufficient power to demonstrate the impact. The moment becomes unforgettable because you can see it better after you understand all its parts. The floating fruit trick. In the episode Personal Magnetism, there's a moment where fruit seems to move on its own across the table. Pears and grapes slide as if pulled by some unseen force, creating a strange and funny scene. It's meant to feel like something unusual is happening, almost like magic. The cast reacts to it as if it's real, adding to the surprise of the moment. The trick becomes easier to see when you examine it with greater attention. The thin wires that lift the fruit show themselves while they cause light to reflect at the top of the frame. The objects remain partially concealed, yet they become visible after someone sees them. The actual mechanism behind the floating food effect produces a simpler version of the visual trick that creates the illusion of floating food. Once your eyes catch those wires, the entire illusion changes instantly. The second episode demonstrates a similar moment when a table seems to rise without any visible cause. The wires that operate the table lift mechanism show themselves for a short time, which displays the method used to create the effect. The show developed its visual effects through these basic techniques, which show the methods used to create its visual tricks. The illusion remains intact enough to deliver entertainment value for viewers despite its failure to stand up against detailed examination. The wires become visible, which enhances the enjoyment because it lets viewers understand how filmmakers created the scenes for their movie. The fake ocean revealed. From the very first episode, Two on a Raft, the show builds a strong sense of danger as Gilligan and the skipper struggle in the water, surrounded by sharks. The moment is meant to feel intense and real, with waves moving around them and no clear way out. Everything about the scene is designed to pull you in. It makes it seem like they are truly out at sea, far from land, with nothing but open water in every direction. The illusion becomes less convincing when you stop walking and begin observing the scene through detailed examination. The skipper demonstrates his sailing skills by throwing the sail, which reveals an unexpected element that appears beyond the visible area. The sky ends at a certain point, Because there exists a visible backdrop that extends beyond the water's surface. The surface does not achieve complete smoothness because it contains multiple irregularities. The fabric displays minor wrinkles that extend to a narrow opening that exists at the point where water touches the lower edge. The details show that the scene originated from a controlled film set, which used a water tank instead of filming on actual open ocean waters. The standard operating procedure at that time enabled filmmakers to shoot scenes under secure conditions while achieving better scene management. Most viewers found the system to be effective. The moment produces an authentic experience because it creates a quick illusion of reality. The complete perception of the space transforms when you observe its boundary limits. The movie changes its main emphasis from the dangerous content to the actual production techniques. The experience retains its full value through this element. The experience delivers additional value through this element. The project gives audiences a special opportunity to see how basic equipment and smart design created a believable world. That one exposed a lot, but the last one on our list is the most surprising. Mike Troubles. In the episode Home Sweet Hut, there's a quick moment inside the professor's hut that most people never notice. The scene plays out like any other, with the characters talking and moving naturally around the set. Everything seems normal at first glance, but if you focus on the wall behind them, a small detail slips in that wasn't meant to be seen. The shadow from an overhead microphone shows itself on the wall, but only lasts for one brief moment before it vanishes. The equipment itself isn't visible, but the shadow gives it away. The shadow reveals the presence of a boom mic, which operated above the actors to record their dialogue. The shadow reveals hidden elements that break the illusion of the performance. The first part of the sentence requires full attention to comprehend it, because most viewers found it impossible to discover. Once you spot it, your focus shifts away from the scene and straight to the mistake. The production equipment occupied the area close to each scene, which became evident after you discovered its presence. The small errors demonstrate how quickly the production process operates because even minor mistakes can become permanent elements of the finished product. The scene receives additional value from the hidden element because it creates an authentic background element that improves the moment. These small details might seem easy to miss, but once you spot them, they completely change how you see the show. It just proves that even the most familiar scenes can still hold hidden surprises. If you caught any of these or noticed something we didn't mention, drop it in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the next video on your screen. You might spot something even more surprising there.